everyone, and welcome to the Political Job Interview, where I interview candidates running for election. I'm Vincenzo Calla, the host, and today I take on the role as the boss, giving a job interview to today's candidate, Julie Fiala. Julie is running for election for Ottawa City Council as a candidate for Ward 12, Rideau-Vanier. Thank you, Julie, for your time, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you, and without further ado, let's get this job interview started. So as with any good job interview, I'm going to start off with an opportunity to learn more about Julie. So Julie, the first question I always like to ask everybody is, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yes, of course. That's such a broad question, but I thank you for asking it. And before we get started, I just want to say I think it's so amazing that you yourself as a young person are taking initiative to meet candidates. I think it's great to see. I have some friends who are young candidates running themselves, so I love to see young people involved in democratic debate. So thank you very much. I would say, so your question, just if you want to repeat, was why did I decide to get involved?
Can you tell me a little bit about your story first, and then we'll go on to that next?
Yes.
So a bit about your life and your story.
Sure. So, fière Franco-Ontarienne, I was born at the Montfort Hospital. I am really from here. When people ask me where I'm from, I tell them, je suis de la place in French. I am of the place. I am of the place on which we stand. You know, right here, I'm in the corner of Saint-Charles and Laval. I was born here. I emerged from the ground and I'm of the place. So that's a bit about me. I studied at De La Salle, so I'm very much created by my community. De La Salle is a high school that's situated very near where I currently live. I then spent a couple of years, there was a time in history where certain Franco-Ontarians that lived in Lower Town were moved, or kind of this controversy around this question, but my mother believes we were forced by the mayor to relocate more on the east side of Ottawa. So some of my formative years while I was at De La Salle were spent closer to Blair Road, closer to that area, Blair Road, Montreal Road. I don't know how familiar you are with Ottawa, but so I moved a bit on more east side. But always studied in the ward, always lived in Ottawa-Vanier as a ward. And I then moved on and did everything from undergraduate studies at Queen's University to receiving a Commonwealth scholarship, which led me to study in the UK, my master's, and then completed a PhD at Queen's, where I also had the opportunity to carry out a lot of field work abroad. So I actually worked in Northern Ireland primarily, and worked in conflict zones. So that brought me as an artist, because I'm an artist, but that brought me to using art in very creative ways to help people.
It's great that there's a candidate, that candidates are connected with their community, avec ces personnes qui vivent là, et with the people that are really have formed you as a person, and to represent them in the future, hopefully as their counselor, is just so important.
I feel so too. I feel like really because people say to me, you've worked internationally, you know, and I say, yeah, but I'm of the place. I'm knit by the women in my community. You know, I really am. I'm of the place. And people say, what do you mean? Well, I say, ben, je suis de la place. And then I go on to say this, my ancestors are buried in both cemeteries. They're under your feet. And then they look at me and they say, oh, okay, we understand. You know, so I like to link to territory and land in that way, because I am that person. Je suis franco-ontarienne. Point.
Right. And the second question now is, continuing on that, why have you decided to run for this position?
Well, I'll say it very simply. I think we need more women in politics. That's the main reason. But secondly, I would say that I always believed from a very young age. My mother said, what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, maybe my answer was naive at 2 years old, but I said, you know, I want to change the world, Mom. You know, I said, I want to be a politician. And it's funny because I also, you know, decided at a young age, I wanted to be an artist. So I chose a very difficult trajectory. I mean, being an artist who wants to change the world, it's, you know, it's maybe not the most common thing, but when you think of somebody like John Lennon, you know, imagine all the people, give peace a chance. These statements are some that have really changed the world. They've changed the conception of how we see the world. But what happened during my life is that I realized that art and politics went hand in hand. That actually the potential to transform the world through art was the same as the one that it took to imagine a better world through life. And so I became a teacher. I became a professor. So I do all these things at the same time, but I really believe that it's through teaching and through education that we become better humans. I mean, we can all become better humans. So your question was the reason why I chose to run. I want more women in politics, but not just that. I'm better, faster. I mean, better is all a judgment, it's quality, but I really feel that I'm faster. I have new ideas. They're coming from my international awareness, but they're located in the community. In that way, I really feel that I can bring something that doesn't exist. I mean, Mathieu Fleury, who's the person who is currently holding the position, is also de la place. But when people say, are you like him? Are you different? T'es aussi franco-ontarienne comme lui. I say, well, I'm a woman. I'm faster. I happen to have also, I try to stay modest, but I have more education. I have more life experience. I'm older. I think that all that, and I have a lot of experience changing the world in my own ways. So I'll tell you about that in the next parts of the interview. But yes.
Oh, for sure. And we're definitely going to continue talking about that. And your community, like you were mentioning, it's a Franco-Ontarien community. It's actually last year I had the MPP there, Lucille Collard, on, and we talked about that community and how it's such a different community than all the other communities in Ottawa, because it's first of all mainly French. And it's just so interesting to see that. And it's a very vital part of our community in Ottawa, and a different type of seat at the council table no matter who sits there.
It's a very unique position, and I would add you're very astute in saying that. I know Lucille actually quite well. I ran beside her because I did run as a candidate in 2020 as an independent, again, knowing that I didn't really have a chance, but still wanting to, have my say in democracy and get some more experience running as a candidate at the provincial level at that time. Now we're dealing with the municipality, but nonetheless, what I wanted to say about that was, I think Lucille is correct in that this is a Franco-Ontarian area, but we have to remember one thing. The landscape of Vanier is changing. End of story. And I'm very aware of that. And I think when I mean that, I mean the plurality, the multiculturalism, the complexity, the texture. It's a new place. So I think whoever wins has to be both old and new. I think I have this.
So we're going to take a bit of time to talk about the job and what Julie brings to it. So the first question is, why do you think you are the best candidate for this job?
Well, I've worked in war zones. My PhD, I happen to have a PhD, it was based around ideas of listening. My thesis was called Ethics of Listening. It sounds philosophical, but really it was simple. It argued that more listening and listening better makes more change. Pretty simple. I mean, your role here is to listen to me. You're a kind of personality, a journalist. That is a listening-centered role. So my expertise is listening. So I think I'm the best candidate for the job because I really feel that I have learned through my experience, through scientific kind of research, how to listen better. I'll give you an example. I worked with Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland. I had this idea, how could we get them to listen? How could we get them to work together? Because when we are in a war zone, this is a war zone, Northern Ireland has a feud that lasts forever between religions. It's a bit like our streets in Vanier, where there's tensions between rich and poor, between French and English, between cultures, between gangs. It's a very, very complicated area, a lot of tension on the street. So my feeling was this. In Northern Ireland, I use things like, very simple, a hot air balloon. Imagine a hot air balloon above a war zone. So there are walls in Northern Ireland that separate people. There are 88 or 86 at the time in Belfast, let alone Northern Ireland has even more. These walls are like the Berlin Wall historically. They divide Protestants who live on one side and Catholics on the other. So what I did is I put one project, I did many, to force them to listen. I mean force, to bring them together, was I brought young people like your age and younger in a hot air balloon and put them above these lines where they weren't allowed to cross. And suddenly they could cross. Imagine putting a hot air balloon above a war zone. I mean, this is an incredible thing to do. People told me after, whoa. And it sounds very artistic, but it actually created real change. Because what happened was this. people who'd never crossed over, young people, were now meeting people on the other side. Imagine, in a hot air balloon, this fantastic experience of a young person, 10, 12 years old, meeting a friend he's never met before. A neighbor who lived on the other side of a wall that's divided him for 150 years, you know, for real, from his friends, you know. So I put these people in a hot air balloon, and now they traveled together up on top of the world, you know, literally. And imagine the feeling of these young people, empowered. They are now standing side by side. This sounds like nothing. Oh, but it's big, because then they meet in the schools. They now go around the gate to meet together. They now have friends on both sides. This is how we start change. It takes a long time, you know. And what happened out of my work is that we put a gate in, like an actual door in the peace wall. They're called peace walls, in this Berlin Wall type thing. So people could now cross. They can now cross. You know, before they couldn't cross the wall. They had to walk around it. Took 20 minutes. So imagine now people are still able now to cross over. So this is my point. You know, I'm faster, better. I mean, I don't like this word better, but I believe in this situation, you have to make a judgment call. Who is better? I'm maternal. I mean, I'm a person who believes the world is my child. It sounds funny, but I really care for the world. And yeah, so I think that's an example of the work that I've done. And I believe this, if I can create change in Northern Ireland and add a door in a peace wall to allow people from walk to either, you know, to walk, why can't I clean the streets of Vanier with peace and respect and love and kindness? Why can't we make change? You know, I've done it before. I have a track record. That's an example. I think I've thought outside the box, and Vanier needs that, you know? De La Salle is artists. Vanier is artists. We need to do it with new innovation and creativity. Old solutions have not functioned, you know. We need to do it in ways that are respectful. You know, we need working groups. We need women involved. We need young children to be involved. We need all the ideas we can get, and we need to think like teachers. We need to think in listening-centered ways. That's what I would say.
Definitely really interesting. That hot air balloon idea is really interesting, and I'm sure we'll revisit it and other ideas like that and then in the coming questions. But I wanted to continue on that and ask you, what experience do you bring to this job?
Yes, I have a lot of experience. I'll say that I'm 43 years old. I have no shame in saying that. I started producing these kind of projects that were not just art projects. Some of them are a lot more tangible, even including very regular consultation processes. So it looks like art. Maybe it looks a bit strange, but there are different ways to imagine dialogue, different ways to imagine being together, different ways to reimagine the world. So I started this kind of work in 1998, you know, when I was probably about your age. And, you know, I maybe a little bit older, but when I graduated from De La Salle, even within the 90s, I was already involved in this kind of thinking of how art could maybe be involved in changing the world. I mean, sure, a mural can change the world, but I was interested in more than a mural. You know, I was thinking about the world like an artwork. How can we rearrange the people in it? How can we paint the town red? How can we make it a better place? You know, aesthetically, how can we beautify it? But not just that, how can we make the people in it stronger people? You know, so yeah, so I have 20 some odd years experience, you know, really tangibly. I have worked in many countries, Northern Ireland. I've worked in the context of South Africa. I've worked here locally in Ottawa a lot. I worked in Toronto, in Kingston. I have developed projects in Montreal. I am now a professor. I am the chair of a department of humanities. I have accrued information and respect and knowledge over the years in so many areas. You know, I'm now teaching a class. It's called, I'm a professor of knowledge. People say, what in the world is that? Knowledge. I felt that was so humbling to receive that position. I interviewed for 4 hours and they decided knowledge. I was like, whoa. And what they meant is I have an ability to work in so many areas. You know, I have experience with psychology, experience even in healthcare, where I work with people who have brain problems, who've lost their memory for 10 years, who've been in comas. I somehow work with them. I have worked with activists. I have worked with community workers on the ground. I've just started with a colleague of mine, Shirley Tessier, a working group for missing and murdered Indigenous women and children in Vanier. I have a lot of experience working as a community organizer, but more than that, I think one thing is I have a proven track record of getting stuff done fast. So there's no reason why people should be on the street. You know, a roof is not enough and it's not acceptable, and it's part of my platform. Habitation pour tous, you know, housing for all is my main issue here. So I think speed is so important.
And definitely a lot there that I don't want to continue responding to this yet because we're going to keep on talking about that in the next segment now. So part of serving as an elected official is serving the people who elect you. So here are a few questions about how Julie wants to serve the people. So continuing on that point that you just made in the last segment is, what is something that the people you would like to serve, the people of Rideau-Vanier need, that you would like to get done if elected?
Yes. Well, I think it's a very loaded question. I think everything from OC Transpo to housing to the opioid crisis, which is one evident one in Vanier, you know. I should have asked you what area of the city you live in.
I'm in Barrhaven, but I'm very familiar with all the parts of the city, but I'm living in Barrhaven, so a very different area than Vanier.
But still, we would call it Barrhaven. You know,
Yeah.
I'm an old school Ottawa person, and in my mind, that is like the West and the East. You know, we're from the East very much. My father worked at Tunney's Pasture, and that was the furthest west we'd go. You know, so Barrhaven is far, far, far. But having said that, I asked you that question because, as Lucille pointed out, this area has some super, you know, francophonie, but also huge issues that are particular to it, you know, being so close to the parliament, so close to the Rideau Center. So the main things that I'm really, you asked me my main concerns or the main things I'd like to address. I think, as I said, hands down, housing is the biggest issue. Not just affordable housing. Yes, of course, we need affordable housing, but I think it's more about the ideas of, you know, for everything from a roof is not enough to bringing dignity back to people through giving them housing, not just giving them, of course, this is a complex issue. I'm not talking about some kind of, I'm just saying that if a person is given a home or has a home, let's use that language instead, they have a fighting chance at having a better life. Everybody, I have a lot of empathy, and I know that people find themselves in complicated situations and in horrible challenges. Even, you know, as artists, we went through a very hard time during the pandemic. You know, it was only yesterday. So it's still going on. So I think through housing, we can do a lot of things. So that is my central priority. But having said that, you know, you can't deal with housing without providing people serious mental health supports. I mean, the people who are in particular need in my community have opioid addictions. And, you know, I was asked yesterday, do you think OC Transpo, the Bank Street expansion is something you want? You know, they want to expand the O train or the LRT up Montreal Road from Bank Street. I said to them, of course, you know, all public housing, or sorry, all public money towards services is an amazing thing. To increase that, of course, I mean, but I said to them, you know, what about the 400 wheelchair users, you know, who are complaining about the pavement that needs work, and the cyclists that could also be using that pavement to get to work. So things have changed after the pandemic. I said, what about if we had an LRT on Montreal Road and we found in the back seat somebody with a needle in their arm, you know, drug user. I said, what are we going to do about that? I said, we need to start with the basic humanity first. You know, we can't put an LRT on the streets if we have no social workers. So I think at the end of the day, I do really believe that the most vulnerable are the ones like those in wheelchairs, those people who are, you know, 60 plus are vulnerable as well. They use the OC Transpo. So are we going to put them in an OC Transpo with other users who are maybe more unfortunate, who have drug addictions, who are obviously using OC Transpo to get around as well? Like, we got to think about the ways in which we create our community. We want to create a community that is based on kindness and based on empathy. And at the end of the day, I'm also concerned with a person such as myself in their 40s, you know, or somebody younger in their 30s who wants to buy their first home. How do they do it now? It's really hard. The cost of housing in Ottawa is insane. So yeah, in that sense, I would say that my platform is really about, it's Julie Fiala for all, you know, pour tous. I'm not really, although I have empathy and desire to help the most vulnerable, at the end of the day, we have to have a stronger community, and that needs to be at all levels of the economic, intellectual, and labor spectrum. You know, I have as much respect for the janitor who cleans a public school. They're super crucial. Or, you know, an elementary school, a Catholic, or whether it be Catholic or public, as I have respect for, you know, a government worker who has a stable, maybe more, who, a role that society thinks is higher. You know, for me, I don't see that. For me, all humans are as important. I treat all humans with respect and dignity.
Well, that is so important, and especially you mentioned addressing mental health issues, because mental health issues are really big for everybody, especially during the pandemic. They have come more to the forefront, and people say, let's talk about them. But you can't just talk about them for 1 day or 2 days a year and
No,
then live on your life. It's something constant, something that needs fixing, something that needs to be addressed by all levels of government, by all authority
absolutely.
figures,
Yes,
because when we start with mental health, that you can go on to everything else, because when you address mental health, that fixes a
absolutely.
lot of issues and helps a lot of people start off fresh or fix their lives,
Absolutely.
change their lives. So something
I'm
super important.
saying I'm aligned with you on that, and I really feel that you know, that's why I keep on saying a roof is not enough, because you people, if you know, I think the Salvation Army and that development is a huge issue. I'm not necessarily going to go into that right now, but it's an issue which has, you know, been on the front of the agenda in Vanier for a long time. And again, whether you're opposed or you're for it, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody can argue that. I mean, people need a roof. How are they going to get better? How are they need experts as well. We need, you know, clinical experts. We need psychologists. We need psychiatrists. We need social workers. We need an army. I don't like to use this language, but again, going to the idea of war zones, we need that same kind of patience and care, because people are traumatized. So yeah, we need to help them. But at the end of the day, we also need to make sure our communities are safe. You know, like I'm giving this very clear description in my head. I'm imagining, you know, they have free buses in Ottawa 2 days a week for seniors, right? So you see the seniors getting into this new LRT going up Montreal Road, and who else is with them in the bus? You know, I mean, we've got to think about those realities in our community, and we need to create safety and empathy. We need to protect people from themselves and from others, and we need to create communities where neighbors care about neighbors. And that has happened in Vanier. I know it. I remember it because I'm old enough. It's come and gone in waves. And I don't care who tells me it can't be done. It can be done. It can be done with the right leaders. I really believe it.
Definitely. And finally, I want to go on to the last question now, which is you've been talking a lot about your work and some of the stuff you've done. And I wanted to ask you, if you were to choose one, what is one accomplishment that you have achieved that demonstrates why you would be a good elected official if the people choose you?
Okay. I talked to you a little bit about Northern Ireland, which I think is a huge accomplishment, not just that simple one, but I made many, many projects to bring people together. And I want to say that when people stand side by side this close, it can create a revolution. That's the opportunity for peace. You know, imagine if you had on one side two people, like a Ukrainian and a Russian. I don't want to get into that right now, but when people come together, that is huge. It's not small, it's huge. Because when people sit on a table one by one, side by side, they can negotiate, you know. My greatest accomplishment in my life is perhaps the fact that I finished my thesis. This was a slow road, and that I became a doctor, you know. It was a very slow road. This took approximately 8 years. People told me, you're an artist. What are you doing? Becoming a PhD, a doctor, because this wasn't a PhD in art. Oh, no, no, no. You know, PhD means knowledge, philosophy. This means I can think. This means I can problem solve. I often tell people my expertise is, you know, all roads lead to Rome, actually, but I find the fastest. Time is always now, you know. So finishing my PhD was a huge accomplishment because, as I said, I'm used to thinking in very abstract ways, you know, thinking like an artist, thinking conceptually, thinking creatively. You need to have those skills to finish a PhD, but you know what's necessary for a PhD? The same thing that's necessary for a janitor who cleans the floor every day. Commitment, persistence, being there every day, hard work. Chaque jour, encore, 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 encore. People don't realize that. You know, just because they think of intellectuals is above the people. Oh no. You know, I'm this person who is with everyone. I really am. And part of my challenge is always, how can I be relevant to other people? How can I show that I am like them, because I am, you know? So I like to work with young students at CEGEP level a lot. I would say another great accomplishment is that I am a professor, and that I, you know, even beyond the pandemic, because I've come in and out of working in universities and colleges since the late 90s, really. But now I have a very stable opportunity. You know, it's hard in academia. It's hard in all sectors right now with the pandemic. People don't realize that nothing is stable anymore. So I'm very good at trying to, I always want to be relevant, you know? I will change myself to be relevant, because at the end of the day, we never change our heart. You know, the heart stays the same. So, but we have to be flexible, adaptable. You know, the pandemic has taught us that. So yeah, my biggest accomplishment is certainly the fact that I somehow wrote a huge document. You know, it's 300 and something pages. There's no shortcut, hard work. Yes.
And that is an important way and a very great note to end this interview on today. Just the power of determination and hard work and getting things done, and no matter which way it takes or how long it takes, is just a great way to end this interview today. So thank you, Julie, so much for your time today. It was great having you, and I'm sure the viewers have enjoyed hearing what you have to offer to them. Election Day is on October 24th, 2022, and if you liked hearing what Julie had to say and live in Ward 12, Rideau-Vanier, you have the opportunity to vote for her on Election Day. Check with your local election officials for more details. To stay updated, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at BC Productions 25. Check my website, vincenzocalla.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, and choose to get notifications here on YouTube. The Political Job Interview is a VCalla production. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.